All right, welcome to Razor Radio. This is Andy Freakin Ford, and we are doing our interview series, which I usually do on Thursday nights. We have Bryon Sticky, the founder, creator of the Redwood Metal Fest, which is now in its 8th year. That's impressive, dude. 8
Well,
years in a row.
thank you.
Or no,
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't. It's not. We started in 2012, but we've done 8
mm,
installments because
okay,
pandemic threw a little wrench in there too.
I don't count that stuff because no one could leave. You can't count stuff when no one could do anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It,
yeah. The
it
pandemic
wasn't
was
allowed.
rough, man.
Rough for everybody.
Yes, it was.
Uh, so tell us the history real quick, why it started, and you know, because
Oh,
Mendocino County, a lot of people don't think the Emerald Triangle for a big metal fest.
yeah. Well, so Redwood Metal Fest started in 2012. A friend of mine, Jacob King, and myself, we Jacob King was in a band called Trash Superstars. Played a lot of shows around Mendocino County. I went to a lot of those shows, and we'd always be drinking beer and stuff. And one night after a show, standing out on the porch outside of this one of these shows, we were in our drunken stupor. We were like, "Hey, let's do a metal fest," And that's literally how we came up with the idea. And somehow it manifested into this big metal fest. And the first one was actually at the Mateel Community Center in Humboldt, up in Redway.
Now, that's
Um,
way up north.
yeah, and our first headliner was actually Death Angel. That was our first really big band that we booked. And in all honesty, the show was awesome, but we only had like 170 people show up to it. It wasn't a great turnout, but it was a great show. And I kind of attribute it to the fact that neither one of us knew what the hell we were doing, and
Mm-hmm.
but we threw a super awesome party, and then yeah.
Still to this day, I think Death Angel is one of the most underrated bands in all of metal.
They're starting to come into their own. They're
Never,
finally starting to get their recognition after all this
Mhm.
time, and good for them because they deserve it. Actually, they deserved it a long time ago, but the fact that they're getting it now is good for them.
uh,
Um, yeah.
I go way back with some of those guys. I mean, way back. Uh, I finally got to see him play Ozfest, Not Fest. That was huge.
Wow.
And Death Angel, I was always that band. I thought when I was at Andy Gallian's 13th birthday party, I thought they were going to be huge take over the world at one point. Isn't it weird
You
how
know,
that happened?
and
Sometimes
they probably should have, but like there's, sometimes just some bands just don't get a fair shake, and they got to
Mhm.
claw a little harder and fight a little harder. They're just as talented as everybody else that made it. They just got to pay more dues for some reason. But I guarantee you, those guys have paid theirs, and they're exactly where
Oh,
they should be right
100%.
now. Yeah.
There's little things too, like their manager, Death Angels, also used to manage the band Vane in
Okay.
in the Bay Area. And they got rid of her at one point. Cassidosi, she owned Rebel Records in Santa Rosa. She went on to manage this little girl singer. I think blonde. I think her name was Christina Aguilera. Yeah. So she knew what she was doing, but
Yeah.
uh, it's funny how one little turn or one little thing in your career can change things. The other
Yes.
band, how I became aware of the Redwood Metal Festival is you had Blind Illusion play.
Yes, I want to say that was 2000
I know it
and
was before the pandemic.
I think it was 2019. I want to say they headlined, and they were a great band. I mean, we really enjoyed
Oh
having
yeah,
them. And and Andy, of course, Andy's a great drummer. Mark
a legend.
Mark is crazy, but like crazy in like such a good way. Like he's just one of the funnest guys to talk to. And Doug Piercy and Tom Gears.
Yeah,
Obviously they were a great lineup, great band, and
amazing musicians too. Uh,
exactly.
and
Well,
wow.
no, I take it back. Actually, they did not headline. They actually played in 2021, and they were main support. Our headliner that year was Lich King.
Oh, Lich King. Oh,
Like, how
good,
you
good
forget
guys.
Lich
I know
King,
those
right?
guys too. They've been on Razor Radio.
Yeah, they're really good dudes, and man, they put on a show, dude. So much energy from that band, and that was actually our biggest year out of all of them thus far. Was 2021, and that was actually supposed to be our last. We actually called it the final chapter because we
Yeah.
kind of thought that we'd done everything we should do with the event. We didn't want to start repeating ourselves. Because one of the
Mhm.
hard things about doing an event like this, where you have multiple stages and 10, 20, 15, whatever bands, you only have so many before you have to start booking the same bands over and over again. You kind of
Yeah.
run out of bands. So we kind of went through that, and we decided that in 2021 we'd give it a break or stop for a while, and really didn't think that we were going to come back to it. Thought we were just going to kind of leave it rest and go out on a high note and be like, cool, we did great. And we did an event last year called Mendo Lake Metal Fest, which was kind of it's kind of like our replacement event. Like we decided to do something else instead. And everybody that went to that event, or a good portion of people that went to that event, would walk up to us and be like, "So, are you going to do Redwood Metal Fest again? You're going to do Redwood Metal Fest again?" And the following Monday after that event, I went into the city offices at Ukiah just to ask about the possibility. And it was, the city offices, we'd worked with them for like, 10 years doing this event. And when I walked in, it had been a couple years since I'd been in there, and everybody was new. None of the people I'd worked with were there
Wow,
anymore.
that's the
And
scary thing.
yeah, so I introduced myself. I said, "Hey, I'm Bryon with Redwood Metal Fest." "Oh, stop, what?" The lady behind the counter is like, "You're Bryon?" I was like, "Yeah, Redwood Metal Fest." "Yeah." She goes, "We've been trying to get in touch with you. Like, we really want you to bring back Metal Fest this year." I was like, "Well, I guess we need to do it. If people asked and the city wants us to do it, then we need to do it. So here we are. We're
Yeah,
back."
no, now that tells me how much metal and just the world's changed in the last like 40 years.
Yeah,
Imagine
yeah.
trying to do that in the early 80s
Oh,
with
there's
metal
no
fest,
way. I mean, there's a lot of cool shows in the '80s, but it was always somewhere out of the way in some faraway
a
park.
VFW hall or
Yeah,
something.
but this is literally right in the middle of downtown Ukiah, out in the open, next door to the courthouse. I mean, it's in between the two main streets. It's the town square. You know, you can't hide it.
That's
You can't be away from it. And even if you don't want to hear it, you're gonna hear it. As Ukiah becomes Redwood Metal Fest for a day. It's pretty awesome,
yeah, that's like the old saying, my neighbors listen to good metal whether they like to or not.
right?
But
But
that's awesome. And tell us about some of the other bands you're excited about seeing this year because I got some friends playing this year, and that's one of the reasons I'm coming up for
Well,
it.
we'll talk about the headliner, I guess, in a little bit, but
Yeah.
the main portion of the lineup is our main support band this year is Nevian. That's
Mhm.
Norman Skinner, who's the vocalist for Forbidden. That's his other band. They've been around for, I want to say, 7 or 8 years. They put out a couple albums. I think they got think they got a new one coming out soon. But they're a super
Divine?
awesome band. Yeah,
Yeah.
Nevian. And of course, Schizo is playing, because Schizo's like,
Legends.
well,
Mhm.
they've played all but two Redwood Metal Fests, so
Okay.
they're like, it's kind of not really Redwood Metal Fest if Schizo's not on the bill. So they're on there every year. We've got Negative Six. If you like Pantera, you will totally dig Negative Six. They're just hyphy, Slipknot, Pantera. If they had a baby, it would be Negative Six. Like, they're super
That's a
awesome.
good comparison.
Yeah, and then obviously Hellbender. Hellbender's a Sonoma County band. Got to represent. Our friends from San Jose area, Angerhead. They're a
Well,
super
those
awesome
guys,
band. And let's see, from Lake County, we've got LTD, also known as Live the Day. They're a super awesome thrash band from Lake County.
okay.
Frolic is on the bill this year. Frolic's been doing some big things in the Bay Area. They just played the Omega Fest like this last weekend. They've been making some big moves, so we're happy to have them. X Method out of the Bay Area. They're another super awesome heavy hitting band. Jellyfish Method. They're kind of like skate punk crossover thrash kind of.
I have not heard of them yet.
Yeah, they're super cool. I think they're from like, I want to say they're like from like Suisun City or something. Like, they're somewhere kind of,
Wow.
they're kind of deep, but they're coming up. A band out of Sacramento area called Parabellum. They're very much in the
You
vein
know
of
them?
like, they're very much in the vein of like old Sepultura, like Cavalera era Sepultura.
The best
Um,
era.
yeah, definitely.
I've
Another band out of the Bay Area called Karmic Debt. They're kind of a cool, like, crusty crossover thrash band.
not heard of
And
them.
a band out of the Chico, Yuba City area called Plague of Malice. They're like really like blackened hardcore death metal. And then we've got an opening ceremony by a local kid named Avery Thurman, who's kind of an up and coming bass player. His name's going to probably be out there a lot pretty soon. I know he's making some big moves that I'm not at liberty to tell anybody about yet, but I've heard of
That's always cool.
some moves that he's making, that his name will be out there soon.
Mhm.
But we also have Unprovoked, and what's cool about Unprovoked is Unprovoked was the People's Choice band for this year, because the way that we book Redwood Metal Fest is we have a 5-person committee. We ask for submissions. This year we got 100 and some submissions, and we narrow it down, and then we do a 5-person committee vote where that we have 5 people that vote the bands. That way we don't have a tie. If it is a tie, it's because it's unanimous, and it's the way we get our bands. And we always leave one spot for the people's choice, so that we put it to the people. We make a
That's
poll and say,
awesome.
"Hey, who do you want to see on this bill?" And we take like the top however many bands that we couldn't quite squeeze into the event, and we put them all up for vote, and then we make the bands campaign for their spot. And
That's rad.
we usually take about a week and a half, 10 days or so of voting. And this year Unprovoked was victorious, so we're happy to have them.
They run
And
to good guys too. I like the unprovoked guys.
yeah, and they've been around forever. They're like Sacramento thrash legends, like 30
Yep.
years or so they've been around playing. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, they're really good. But
Now,
then that brings us to our headlining act.
yes, yeah, yeah. Now it's what's I can't read it right. I'm getting old, man. on the flyer,
So this event is called or this band is called A Waltz in Violence, and
of
they're
waltz
just
and violence. Okay,
and
that tells
they're
me Exodus and Death Angel right there.
yes, Exodus and Death Angel is definitely got a lot to do with Exodus and Death Angel. It's more of a an amalgamation of really cool, really legendary guitar players and vocalists, and a super awesome drummer. It's a one-time only exclusive event. This band is only going to perform for Redwood Metal Fest as a Waltz and Violence, and it consists of Dylan Waltz from Union Jack and the Rippers, Rick
And
Hinault from
sarcoma. Bunch of
yeah,
other
Rick Hinault from Exodus, Will Carroll from Death Angel, Steve Smythe and Norman Skinner, both from Forbidden, Mike DeLeon from Soulfly, and Philip Anselmo and the Illegals, and Michael Spencer from Flotsam and Jetsam and Trauma. And together they're a Waltz and Violence. Basically, they're going to be playing the 80s classics, 80s and 90s classic metal that we all love. I mean, I would imagine that there'll be some Exodus and some Death Angel songs in there. I imagine there'll be some Forbidden songs.
You think?
Yeah, I imagine that we might hear some Dio, maybe some Slayer, Pantera. But I've seen the set list, and the songs on it are awesome, and I think everybody's going to love this set. And I'm really looking forward to it. I mean, it's just a great bunch of guys, and just the fact that we were able to pull together like this caliber of performers to come and play a free show in Ukiah,
Mhm.
downtown Ukiah. I mean, these are legendary musicians. They're not just the guys that are in the band. I mean, all these guys have huge resumes. They're world renowned. You know, they've played all over the world to hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people, and they're coming to Ukiah to throw down an hour and a half
That's
set. You know,
rad.
it's going to be awesome. Yeah.
And speaking of one of those guys, let's take a quick break right here. And this is Rick Hunold's new band. This is Die Humane right now on Razor Radio. All right, that was a little Warbringer right there on Razor Radio. They're going to be up that way. They were just up there last weekend for the Omega Fest. And
Yeah, that's pretty
and I
close
think they're
by.
playing with Sadis up there too.
Yeah, I think that's
July.
Yeah, in July. Yeah, it's going to be an awesome
But
show.
yeah, Sadis, dude, it's the only show they're playing in like North America before they take off.
Well, I don't know. I thought they were playing the Phoenix Theater on July
Yeah,
27th.
that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
No, Warbringer. Yeah. No, that's Hellbent. Never mind.
Yeah,
I screwed up there. But
Hellbender.
anyway, Warbringer
Yeah.
was just up there with the for Forbidden. And what do you think of Norman singing from singing
Honestly,
feeling for Russ? It's
I
amazing.
mean, I think Norman's the guy for the job. I mean, if somebody had, for whatever reason, had took me aside and said, "Bryon, who would you pick to be the singer for Forbidden?" I can't imagine that there would be anybody else that I would pick because, Norman's so versatile in what he does. I mean, when you talk about Norman Skinner, it's almost easier to name the bands that he hasn't been in more so than to take the time to name all the bands that he's been in. I mean, the dude is skilled, he's professional, and the first time that I met Norman Skinner was like 2012 at an event called Devastated Fest. I believe it was
Mhm.
in Stockton at the Plea for Peace Center. A friend of mine, Brandon Blacker, put it on. And I believe it was the band Skinner was
Mhm.
playing. And I heard him from another room. I heard this dude that was belting out. I thought it was King Diamond was in the other room. And I had to go in
Wow.
there and I was like, oh, well, crap. Here's this guy singing. And ever since I've just been a fan of just Norman's work ever since then. He's one of the most powerful voices in metal, I think, today.
How do you pronounce it?
Nevian. I mean, look,
Nevian.
I think that's how I pronounce it. That's how it was said to me. But I've also heard it myself said like 10 different ways.
Yeah,
I
so
choose
have I.
Nevian because that rolls off the tongue better.
You're right. It does. I'm going to start using that. But I saw Nevian play with an old Sonoma County institution, played their reunion show in Santa Rosa called Intense. And
Okay.
Nevian was the support for that. And they blew doors. And then I saw the video of him singing Chalice and Blood with Warbringer. He was got up and sang it with him. And dude,
yeah.
They had to bring Forbidden back at this point. I want new music from Forbidden now. It's so good.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I would imagine that they probably are writing some music. I would hope so.
So would I. I mean, you got that's the one thing I've noticed. Everyone asks, how come all these Bay Area bands, Testament, Exodus, that they, how come Possessed, how come they're still around and viable when other music scenes have died? And, and it's because they share everybody like a family, and they slowly all became super groups.
Well, I think that has a lot to do with it, but I also think that it's because they're the originals, they're the OGs, and everything that we have now comes from that. All of these bands that you just talked about, they inspired somebody to be another band that exists today. So, like, to me, I mean, maybe they're not on the same level as like Black Sabbath or Metallica, but to me, they're just as important because they inspired an entire, all of Northern California, Southern California. I mean, a lot of,
Yeah.
even
Oh, Bay
as
Area
far as,
thrash is
Bay
my
Area
favorite
thrash
band
is
in the world
huge.
is Exodus. So I
Yeah.
mean,
Oh, of course,
mm,
but I think it's because they're OG, man. Like they're the original. That's where it came from in the '80s, man. And all these bands are still around because they brought something new to the table. And you know, um, I mean, you go back to your roots, and we're just lucky that our roots are still there.
no kidding. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, but Testament is the best example I give you of how a supergroup thing. Uh, Look at the drummers that have been in that band: Dave Lombardo, Gene Hoglan, and then you got Alex Skolnick, who's probably the best thrash guitar player on the planet. How many guys play thrash metal with a Les Paul?
Alex Skolnick.
That's about all I can think, right? Alex Skolnick. That's funny. Uh, it's just, and then they, Exodus kind of fell apart. Oh, boom! Here comes Lee Altus from Heathen to save them.
Yeah.
Or, it's just there's always somebody ready to step up to keep these bands going.
Well, all these guys, they all grew up together, so to speak. They all came up together from the same place and the same time. So like they all know each other's music, because they were all supporting each other for the last 20, or well, since the '80s when
30
all this
years.
music, yeah, 30 years or 40. I mean, 40 years,
God damn! Don't say
and they've
that.
and they've all been supporting each other. So of course they all know each other's music, So of course they're all friends, and of course they're going to step in and keep the train moving. Like why wouldn't they? I'm happy because at the end of the day, it's like it's all the same people. They've just sort of maybe musical chaired a little bit and
Mm-hmm.
gotten into some new bands. But I think that's a good thing because it's still all the
I
same
think it's a
faces.
wonderful thing.
Yeah.
Uh, and they all used to hang out in that smelly club on San Pablo Avenue in Berkeley called Ruthie's Inn. I think personally, Ruthie's Inn is as important as CBGB's, but that's just me.
Well, you're probably not the only one that thinks that. I personally was never able, I never made it to a show there.
Mm-hmm.
Back when all of this stuff started, I was only like 11, 12 years old, when all of this, and then I moved away to New Mexico for a few years and I managed to get back just in time to catch the tail end of that whole beginning of the '80s thrash movement. And, so I've been fortunate to be around since then, but I missed the early years. Unfortunately, I would have loved to have been a part of that history in some way.
I was 15, 16 in Santa Rosa. And when I got my first car, I had a 73 Nova that my father gave me. He said, keep it in city limits. And he gave me the keys, right? If he knew how many times we crossed that Richmond Bridge to go into Berkeley on a school night or whatever, he'd have killed me back then. And the car never broke down, like a champion the whole time.
It's because
And
that car knew
yeah.
you were doing something important.
But if I had called him, hey, Dad, I'm in Richmond, the car blew up, he'd be like, Richmond? I probably wouldn't be here to do this interview with you because you get killed. But yeah, we and Ruthie's was great because it was all ages. That's another tough thing, which is great about metal festivals, making metal festivals come back big, is the separation now at a lot of clubs and stuff like that. Whereas if you want to have drinks, you got to be 21 and over.
Yeah.
Or if you want to have all ages, you can't have any drinks, and people want to go.
That's a tough spot for music venues because the way the music industry kind of goes now is like there's really not a lot of money in music. It's more of a passion for people, more of an expensive hobby for most musicians, and
Yeah,
even
thanks,
for
internet.
yeah, and even for like the venues make their money off selling booze. So it's like that's part of the scene. It's something that has to be contended with. So, and unfortunately, there's not a lot of all ages venues these days because in order to have a place for people to play music, the venues have to make choices on how to make that money. And unfortunately, the kids get left out a lot. But that's kind of one of the reasons why we do Redwood Metal Fest is because we want to be able to give young people and up and coming bands and locals, people that normally wouldn't be able to go to, like, say, a big festival like Aftershock that costs $1,200 a head for the weekend. We like to
Yes.
try to give them a way to feel like they're part of something like that, but here in this local setting, because Redwood Metal Fest has very much like a big festival vibe, but just in a very small area. But we try to make it feel like you're at Ozfest. We try to make it feel like you're at Aftershock.
Now,
Um,
let me ask real quick, since we're talking about the holidays, you guys do have a beer garden too, right?
Yes, we do. We have a nice little area sectioned off for mom and dad to get, to get a little happy, you know. So yeah, we'll be serving beer and probably some wine and, libations for moms and dads.
See, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
What's good about that though is the beer garden actually supports. It's a nonprofit beer garden and it supports the KMEC. It's the environmental center here in Ukiah, and they're activists for the environment, for nature, and politics, and keeping people up to date on current events and things of that nature. And so we do our best to help them stay afloat, and they usually make a good chunk of money from the beer garden to pay their bills and stay on the air at
so
KMEC.
basically what you're saying is you're drinking for charity.
You're drinking for charity. It's for a good cause. So,
Now,
if you got to double fist it, it's for a good cause.
all right, let's talk about your sponsors real quick, because they, I imagine when you're putting on a free festival, they matter quite a bit.
Yeah, so like I was telling you earlier, a free festival is free to the people that come, but it's not free to make it happen. And
Hmm.
somebody has to foot that bill. And little old me, I don't have enough money in my pockets, so we rely on sponsors and grants. And we actually received a fairly sizable grant from the county of Mendocino this year.
That's
So
rad.
Visit Mendocino is a great program for local businesses and things of that nature, and they gave us a sizable amount of money to help us promote the event and push the event and make it successful. But along with that, we've also received donations from Hasty Electric, who is Paul Hasty from Angerhead,
Mm.
the local bike club, the Freedom Riders out of Lakeport. We've also received donations from Jesse Conger Insurance Agency, as well as Project X Productions, Slam Dunk Pizza. Billy Garut from Silly Strings helped us put together that cool guitar right down there in the
Yeah,
corner.
I know,
Is
I know, Billy. Yeah,
Yeah,
good.
and he helped us. Me and him collaborated on a cool guitar that we're giving away, or not giving away, we're raffling off at
Mm.
the event. Billy did a really good job on that for us. We're also sponsored by Rock Rage Radio and Honest Brutality podcast, and also Fatal Flaws Productions. But all of these people have either put in money, or they've given us other things that can be used in lieu of money. But everybody's contributed something to make the event successful, so we appreciate it. And basically, all of the bands play for free.
That's awesome.
The bands come up, they take their time, their energy on their dime, they transport themselves here, they do and they come and they play, and it's a great event all around. What I like about it is the fact that it brings everybody together and everybody's on the same page, at least for that one day, for those 8 hours, 9 hours. Everybody's just together, brothers and sisters, having a good time. And in a way, for me, this is, I promote, I do a lot of other shows during the year, and people come out and they support my events. They spend their money, they buy tickets. And this is one way that I give back. This is
That's
like my
awesome.
gift back to the community. And I also think that it's also the band's ability to give something back. And at the same time, it's also a way to keep music culture alive in, Northern California, because it's important, even if it's not heavy metal.
Yeah,
Music is important, and it's a gathering place for people, and it's a place where you can check your baggage at the door and commune for an evening and have a good time. And I think it's important to keep that alive. And like I said, this is our way of doing that.
awesome. Now, for all you listening out there in the FM land in Southgate, in there, I'd like to let you know that this happens in Ukiah, which is the heart of Mendocino County, which for those who don't know, it's basically part of the Emerald Triangle. Correct?
That
Uh,
is
and
correct.
and if you're going to the dispensary down the corner, I bet you they got in something from there. Uh, now, I wanted to ask: is someone told me that with the weed industry becoming legal and all that stuff, that between you, Mendocino and Humboldt and Trinity, that a lot of these grow farms are going to become like where I grew up in Sonoma County, like the wineries. You know what I mean?
You know
But
what? I've never really been in the weed industry. I mean,
uh,
I did my fair share of partaking as a youngster, but
mhm,
you know, I've never really been a part of that industry. But as I understand it, yeah, when they legalized and they made it recreational, all that stuff. I mean, for the most part, you know, the green economy they called it, you know, was dependent on it being slightly illegal, you know, and the fact that it's basically legal now, you know, in most forms or whatever. I think, you know, yeah, it's kind of dried up a bit, so to
no
speak.
shit, really.
Yeah, you know, I mean, there's no shortage by any means.
Uh,
I mean, you can go. I mean, in my opinion, it's about the same as kind of growing tomatoes or corn. It's pretty much a commodity now. Whereas
wow.
it used to be something really, you know, special and niche and just something that
If you
came from
didn't
this
go
area that
hiking in Mendocino or Humboldt,
yeah.
you
And
have
now it's more like, you know, I mean, who buys weed when every single person is allowed to grow it? Nobody's going to buy it. You know, I don't go next door and buy tomatoes from my neighbors. So,
that's interesting.
you
That's
know,
an interesting take. Very interesting. That's good to know. All right, dude. What else you want to add before we get off the air here? I want to let you know we're coming up with a carload for this for the first time. Riz
awesome.
Radio is going to cover the event. I might even go live a few times from it. But what else do you want to put out there before we move along?
Um, well, you know, we've got a lot of we've got food, we've got vendors. We'll have a pizza guy, we'll have a hot dog guy. We'll have T-shirts. All of the bands will be vending. We've got other vendors that are coming, but we have something that we give away every year. And anybody that's been to Redwood Metal Fest in the past has their past Redwood Metal Fest compilation CDs. This
That's
is this
awesome.
year's. I'm not going to show you the track list. You have to come get one to see what the track list is.
Right on.
But these are free. We give these away. You do not have to pay for these. However, there's only 100 of them. So the first 100 people get one, and anybody else after that gets to listen to their friend's CD. Yeah, if you want one, you got to get there early because they go quick. But yeah, it's free. It's all ages. It's all day long. It's family friendly. We've got the beer guard. We've got food. We've got vendors. Basically, we're taking over Ukiah for a day. And after that, immediately following Redwood Metal Fest's conclusion at 9:30, there will be an after party 2 blocks up the street at Ukiah Brewing Company, featuring our local punk heroes, Resurrection Radio. That is another free show for the 21 and plus crowd. So mom and dad got somewhere to go afterwards and
After
have a
you
few
put the
more
kids
beers.
to bed from being
Yeah,
tired of.
put the kids to bed and come have some tequila shots and get down at the after party. But that's also a free event, and it's literally a 3-minute walk from the park. So
That's
we've
awesome.
got a lot going on. It's going to be a fun day, and I wouldn't expect to see any less than 3,000 people throughout the day. You know, it's
That's
going to be a good
rad.
time. Yeah.
All right, dude. That's June 15th. Once again, folks. All right, Brian. Thank you. What do you want to hear going out?
Oh man, let's hear some ultra violence.
From the band Ultraviolence or Death Angel?
Death Angel.
All right. This is Death Angel right now. Thank you again, Brian. Right now on Razor Radio.